Rational Roundtable. Thanks very much for your further endorsement. I really appreciate all the wonderful things you've said about me so far, and the encouragement that you've given to people to subscribe and check out my channel. It means a lot to me. It's very nice to see that. You comment about us having gotten further than 99% of people who have this debate, and I think I agree. Because especially as I compose my response to this video, because it seems like we're really getting now, I think, into the meat of where you and I, where our worldviews kind of diverge from the things that we can all agree on to where you and I see things differently that might lead to our differing views. And I'll get into that in a bit. And I wanted to say, in response to your thanking me for debating in the fashion that we have so far, that you're welcome, and right back at you. Thank you for everything that you've done in this whole enterprise. Not only helping me out, but also just really being a fair and receptive sparring partner. So let's get into it now. One of the first things you discuss is the assumption of physical reality, with the exception of self-existence, and furthermore the assumption that the universe is logical and consistent, or that it's consistent. And I see sort of an echo of David Hume in a lot of what you said. The universe that we live in has appeared consistent up to this point, but there's nothing to say, as far as we know, at any point that the universe can't suddenly change its rules. These are all things that we ought to consider and keep in mind, sort of for the sake of Socratic humility, among other things. But I think that you would probably agree with me that the assumption that the universe is consistent is itself consistent with what we perceive, and B, necessary for even just for us to carry on our lives. Now we get into creative possibilities, and this is where the sort of the roots of our disagreement start to show, and I hope that you'll join me in continuing to dig and uncover as much of those roots as we can. That's where people find common ground, is when they, really bring everything to light and say, okay, so we disagree here, why? What else can we see that might shed some light on this? So I'll get right into that. The three creative possibilities for the universe that you list are ex nihilo, which you point out as impossible for the naturalist position. My response to that claim would be that I certainly don't consider myself educated enough to defend the assertion that ex nihilo is possible. Oh, excuse me. But I reserve the right, as it were, to, if need be later on, to go out and educate myself on this topic, and come back to it, because it's my understanding that some of contemporary physical theory suggests that it is possible for the universe to have created itself from nothing, ex nihilo, and which literally means from nothing, and other things, as I mentioned before, from contemporary physical theory have been simply so bizarre and so contrary to what we can imagine, and simultaneously so impossible to really conceptualize without a deep understanding of the mathematics involved, which I don't possess, that I don't find it at all hard to swallow. That there's yet another layer of perplexity at work that would make ex nihilo possible in ways that seem ridiculous and absurd to us, but not necessarily any more so than quantum theory or relativity is to us. There are people who, it kind of gets back to what I said earlier. There are the people who are the people who would know about these sorts of things. And in the case of Stephen Hawking, who is certainly one of those people, excuse me, seems to be wanting to keep the door open for ex nihilo. And I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but whatever. The steady state universe, which you describe as impossible vis-a-vis the expansion of the universe, that's been pretty clearly demonstrated. I would agree that the steady state universe is at best very unlikely, and I can't see any room for it in any of the theory that I'm aware of. The third and final possibility that you list is an eternal state prior to the Big Bang, something like a singularity you mentioned. Just for the sake of brevity and simplicity, I'm just going to use the word singularity, and you can understand that to mean singularity or whatever. Prior to the Big Bang. You say that this is the most logical naturalistic explanation, and that prior to the Big Bang, the universe would have existed essentially without time, and so that there would have been a trigger event that would have initiated the Big Bang and created the universe as we know it today. Essentially. And it's essentially it's on this third possibility that you build the rest of your argument, and I will address that argument itself. But first, I wanted to point out that I think there is a fourth possibility here that fits into this. That being the universe was created as a byproduct of the machinations of some other larger extra-universal environment. And M theory, which we've already talked about once, excuse me again, with the brains colliding, you remember, is a good example of that there's this extra-universal environment where things are already happening according to physical laws, whether they're similar to ours or not, and that the things that are happening in that environment can cause our universe to exist. And I see that last alternative as the most likely of the four of the three that you listed plus this one. So I'm not inclined necessarily to concern myself a great deal with this eternal state prior to the Big Bang. Now, that state prior to the Big Bang could have been eternal in the sense that time did not exist within it. But that gets to be a little anthropic when you think about time. We are temporal creatures. We are creatures who not only exist in time, like the fish that exists in water in your analogy, but that our minds are themselves temporal, that we cannot function in any meaningful way without time. Time is more than just the water we swim in. It's even more than the molecules we're made of. It's even deeper than that. It's something so fundamental to what makes us what we are that, a conscious thought is the manifestation of a change over time in the physical system that is our mind, our brain, that creates our mind. Without that change over time, there is no mind. Mind is a meaningless concept, at least as minds function in the case of humans. You also talk about consciousness being necessary to act as the trigger on the eternal universe in singularity. I think that the lack of linear time is extremely problematic to this position. I don't see any reason to believe that the machinations of our mind are any exception to the physical laws that govern the motion of bodies through space. Now, there are obviously other factors at work in one circumstance compared to the other. The specifics of what's actually happening inside a human brain are different from the specifics of what's happening on the order of a planet rotating and revolving around a star. But there's no reason that I can see to assume that there's anything separate from the physical laws providing parameters to the function of our brains. So it seems to me that we are no better equipped to do quote-unquote arbitrary things than the rest of nature. We're complex, and we're unpredictable because of our complexity. We're unpredictable to one another. One could argue that if one had exhaustive knowledge, and in theory that person, that being, would be able to predict your behavior perfectly, given furthermore an understanding of the situations in which you find yourself and the stimuli that you'll receive. I'll just read this question as you spoke it. If we have to conclude that it was either an unliving force or a conscious entity making a choice without the benefit of time, which appears more likely? In all perfect honesty, I'd have to say that it seems more likely that an unliving force would act than a conscious entity. And, and let me explain why. There's nothing that we know about minds that suggests that they're even remotely capable of functioning without linear time. Everything that we know about minds suggests a deeply fundamental reliance on linear time. The whole concept of a mind is predicated on change over time from one state to another state. A stream of consciousness, if you will. If there's no change over time, there's no stream of consciousness. If there's no stream of consciousness, there's no mind. So the idea of a mind existing in a timeless state seems literally nonsensical to me. The universe, let's say, for one reason or another, exists timelessly. And then this thing happens. See, we've already revealed our fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. There is no such thing as timelessness and then. That doesn't make any sense. So it's clear that we don't understand what's happening. There is no point at which the arbitrary action took place. There is no reason to call it arbitrary, because there is no time to create a context for it. Or alternately, maybe the existence of the singularity and the Big Bang were essentially the same event. Let's say that the singularity that exploded in what we call the Big Bang and became our universe was essentially just a chunk, a piece of this other larger universe, extra-universal environment that was suddenly isolated from its existence in that universe or in that extra-universal environment and entered its own discrete existence in the realm of existence that contains what we call our universe, which is to say everything that you can reach by traveling through three-dimensional space from here. And as a reaction to, for lack of a better word, finding itself in that circumstance, it explodes in the Big Bang. That the two things were, that it's coming to exist in this realm, and it's exploding in the Big Bang, were essentially one and the same event. If it could be literally anything, if it could be just membrane shaking in some extra-universal environment, for example, there are so many more possibilities of what it could be that don't qualify as God than there are that do. The idea of this consciousness being part of it just seems like such a superfluous claim that it just would be shaved off by Occam's razor, as I see things. And that's my response for now. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say about that. Thanks.